So if you tend to feel your back extensions, anything where you're laying on your belly, lifting your chest, if that tends to only be in your neck or maybe in your low back, then we'll teach you some tricks to kind of get that to where it's supposed to be, which is right around the center of these mid-back muscles right through here. So first thing is we're actually going to start on hands and knees. So instead of starting laying on our belly doing the extension, we'll show you a little trick first. The idea is to think of taking your rib cage and lifting it up away from your hip bones to create an extension, as opposed to just thinking of folding at your low back, okay? So an easy way to do that is to practice a cow position from, your cat-cow stretches that you would know how to do already, but let's make your cow shape a little more active. So you take the heels of your hands, you think of drawing them back towards your knees, and while you do that, push your sternum forward, lift your bottom ribs away from your hip bones, and pretend like you could drag your chest forward on the mat even longer, keeping your hips steady where they are. It's going to create an extension in your upper spine, and then on your exhale, you just relax yourself back to your normal position. We are looking to do extension not just to strengthen the mid-back, but to stretch the front side. So this is a good way to see if you can feel the stretch happening through the front side or all the abdominals from all the ab work that we do in Pilates. So as you pull the hands back, guide the sternum forward, think of taking the ribs away from the hip bones, drawing the shoulders down toward the hips, and then relaxing back into your neutral position. So remember what that feels like. And let's take you all the way down onto your belly on the mat. Now, let's address the neck first. Often what happens is we're resistant to start our extension with our nose and forehead straight down to the mat. We end up starting looking forward and maybe with our chin on the mat. That's already bending the neck in a place that we don't want it to be. So make sure you're starting with your forehead straight down on the mat, and then taking the shoulders and drawing them down toward the back of the hips. And one of the things you can do is change your hand position according to what your neck feels like. So if you tend to do extensions with your hands into your forehead, that can create tension in the upper traps. So instead, let's try elbows down on the mat, so forearms and elbows. Now, the same as you did in your cow shape, you think of dragging the whole forearm back toward the feet. You'll feel your body shift forward on the mat a little bit, but if you notice, you'll also feel some space happening in between the shoulders and the tips of the ears. So, create your length, elbows drag back toward the feet. Now start to inhale and lift the chest up, slide the sternum forward on your mat, and push down into your hands. Now, any height is good. Everyone's extension is going to look very different. Then you lower it all back down. If you feel your triceps working on this one with the elbows in this position, that's okay too. So you can stick with this if this feels like a place where you're starting to feel your mid-back working and your neck is not working. If this still doesn't work for you, try taking your hands and reaching them long for your feet. So palms are down on the mat and pressing into it. Crawl your fingertips down the mat just a little more so we can keep the shoulder blades gliding down. Then start to inhale, push the sternum forward, crawl the fingers back toward the feet, and roll the shoulders back and down. Then inhale, lower the whole shape back down. So getting rid of the weight of the arms up overhead can often take care of that neck tension. The last piece of the neck tension is that as you lift your chest, you only have enough extension in your spine to remain looking forward at your mat. If you find yourself looking forward in front of you on these exercises, you're going to put tension right back into your neck. So gaze forward and down toward the mat, not up toward the wall in front of you, and then lower it back down. The next piece that we often have to work with on extension is feeling too much happening in the lumbar spine down here. So the first thing we usually work with is lowering the height of our extension. So instead of just lifting up really high, especially if you have the flexibility, we're going to go just a little bit off the mat. So elbows are down on the mat so we can rest weight into our arms instead of making our back do all the work right now. You're going to lift your head and chest just slightly. Now, provide the same length you did when we worked on your neck. Elbows go back toward the heels, Sternum drags forward to the mat. So that should give you a little bit of a release from your low back there. The next thing I want you to do is unclench your butt cheeks. Okay, we often hear that to protect the low back on extension, we should squeeze our butt as hard as possible. That does two things. It rotates your legs externally, and it encourages a posterior pelvic tilt. That's not what we're looking for when we extend our spine. So relax your butt, relax your abs. Abs do an opposite motion from extension, so we don't need them on right now. What we need instead is length. So fire up the hamstrings, make the legs really straight, and then get them a little longer on your mat. And think of reaching back long through the legs and pulling the sternum forward as we lift the chest up. So hamstrings are on, mid-back muscles are on, my triceps are on, but my abs are relaxed, and my glutes are just barely working. And I lower it back down. I know that advice is a little bit opposite of maybe what you've heard in the past, but give it a try. See if you can just reach your legs long, reach the crown of the head long, get yourself longer than the length of your mat, and only lift as high as you don't have tension in your lumbar spine, and then lower it back down. See if that feels like a little less pressure happening on your low back. From there, anytime you've done a bunch of extensions, you want to pass through a neutral spine up into some sort of counter stretch. So maybe that's a gentle cat back for you. Maybe it's sitting all the way back into a child's pose, okay? Now, extension is difficult to get for most people, so you might have to practice your range of motion being really small and really long before you actually feel like you've got a hang of it, and that is totally fine. I hope that helps with your low back on your extension exercises, and we'll see you soon.